Hey everyone, Natalie here from the Pendulum's Path. If you need guidance, direction, spiritual connection, or more, then listen up. I have worked as a psychic and a medium for over 3 years, connecting people from all over the world with their loved ones in spirit, giving them insight and guidance into their current situations, the past healings that need to be worked on, and what it is they need to know today in order to have a better future. It would be my absolute honor if you would visit my website at www.thependulumspath.com. I also offer emailed readings for those with busy schedules too. Also, for you goblins who subscribe to the Esoteric Book Club, I have a special coupon code just for you. Enter the code Stay Weird to get $5 off of any order of $25 or more. Hope to see you there.
The Esoteric Book Club is brought to you in part by the members of the Esoteric Archive. Specifically, Grand Inquisitor Annie K, Grand Inquisitor Samantha, and Soul Rising Studios. Their contributions help pay server costs, purchase reading material, and helps me in my campaign to protest the overharvesting of crystal skulls. They already have crystal bones. We don't need to make life any more difficult for them. If you like the show and you want to help contribute, go to patreon.com/Esoteric Book Club, and you too can join the archive. Now, let's get weird. Welcome to the Esoteric Footnotes. Welcome back, Goblins! I'm your host, Jason, and tonight we have special guest, author of Northern Lights, High Strangeness in Sweden, Fred Andersson. Welcome to the show, Fred.
Thank you so much. I'm very, very happy to be here. I was a little bit afraid before we started that my voice won't make it because I've been in a 4-hour meeting before this. I'm just trying to get my voice to work here.
Sure. No need to apologize. We all understand.
Ah, good. Are you sure? Everyone understands?
Well, most people. If not, we'll figure it out. That's their problem, not ours. So you are the author of the book Northern Lights, which, if I remember correctly, that name changed a few times.
Yes, it did. I'm one of those persons that when I write a short story or a book or even an article, I often have a very catchy title when I start. Just for, it's an inspiration. Sometimes the title comes first. And with this one, I had a title quite early called, I think it was Borderlands. And I kind of, it was, I like the title, and I mention it on social media, I'm thinking of calling the book Borderlands. And everyone just say, hey, I mean, there's like 500 other books with that name, Borderlands. And, I started to feel insecure, can I publish yet another book with this name? And yeah, but after a stroke of genius, it landed on Northern Lights, High Strangeness in Sweden. I'm quite happy with that title. I'm living in the northern parts of the world, in Scandinavia, in Sweden. I've seen Northern Lights. That's the most beautiful, magical thing you can see up here. And it kind of felt, you have these mysterious lights. I think it fit quite good to the book after all, considering all the other titles I had. Inside, I'm kind of still calling the book Borderlands when I see it. It's hard to get away from.
I like the new title. It's a good bit of wordplay, and it really sets the theme for the book. And that's what I really appreciate about your writing is, and I mentioned this in the previous episode, that your writing is Keelian, but you don't take yourself or the stories too seriously. But you also don't make fun of the stories, which is very, very important. You relay the information and then you respond to it, sometimes humorously, and there's a nice ebb and flow to the pacing of the book itself.
Well, thank you. I'm very flattered. You say Kilian. Of course, I am. It's, yeah, in my opinion, ufology, if we can call this ufology, because it has a lot to do with flying saucers, of course, ufology lacks humor in
Hmm.
general. If you look at the big names, they take themselves very seriously, and they take the smallest, most boring spot of light up in the air. They do, they're really hyping it like this will change the world. Disclosure is soon. And I can't stand it, really. I find the phenomenon very, very funny. I find it like a very, very humorous phenomenon. It's a humorous phenomenon, and I'm aware, because I heard this criticism, that some people get very scared by it. But I stand by my opinion that if you experience something, and if you decide that this will be fun, or this is exciting or magical, it will only give you, a positive experience. But if you see something that's if you get scared by it, I know I'm talking like a person who never had that kind of experience, of course. But if I saw a bunch of aliens dancing, outside in the forest, I would enjoy it tremendously, and I don't think it would happen anything nasty to me. So I feel that, I mean, you as the witness, as the experiencer, if you see it as something beautiful or funny, it will be a very positive experience. I know everyone will be very angry at me because of this, but that's what I believe, at least.
Well, that's not the only way to view this phenomena either. It's very personal, it's individualized, and there's a lot of witnesses who begin with fear. The event happened and they're scared, but then it turns into this life altering event that shaped the direction of their life from that point forward. And they see it as a very positive thing, even though it was frightening at the moment. So why not make it humorous? Why not diffuse the fear and diffuse the situation?
Yeah, I totally agree. And of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit. I would probably be scared if I saw a monster out in the forest. But I feel that I could look at it in a different way. It's interesting how you mention exactly this, because in the book I write about a guy named Ante Jonsson, who in the beginning of the 80s was literally attacked by aliens. He was driving around, and he saw a big black UFO hovering above the road or by a field. He managed to drive his car into the snow, into the ditch, get stuck there, and some aliens tried to grab him and drag him into the flying saucer. It was a shock. He was in a psychiatric hospital for days after, actually, because it was
Oh,
such a terrifying experience. But after that, when he landed after that traumatic experience, he became a happy, joyful person who loved when these aliens came to visit him. They became his friends. It made him a happier, maybe more beautiful person in that way. And I love that about that story. I love how he at least turned it into something very rewarding, something
hmm,
fun.
yeah, absolutely. Were there any other stories that really stood out to you that you appreciate the witness's view and how it changed their worldview ultimately?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this book a couple of times now, and there's one chapter called "Like the Wings of a Dragonfly."
Hmm.
And I know these two witnesses, Jürgen and Ulrika. They had this just strange little experience in the 80s, 84, I think. Basically, seeing a ball or a sphere, large as a basketball, with a string attached to it, a thick string, and two two wings at the top, like dragonfly wings, and it was kind of hovering on the road. And they actually drove into it. They hit it with their car, and at first they didn't react to this, as in many other cases, when it comes to high strangeness. They just like, okay, what was that? And they continue to drive. But for them, I realized that when talking to them, for them, this was the mystery of their life.
Mm.
I mean, they're still a happily married couple, and they have a successful, company, great children. But for them, it felt like, and maybe I'm reading in too much here. It felt like the glue, in their
Mm.
in their mutual adventure together here in life. They never experienced anything like it afterwards or before that, but they still so happy to talk about it, because you can hear them how they start to fill in each other's words. It's like it's like the great adventure they had for a couple of moments on a dark road in 1984. I love seeing that. I love seeing that when it so that probably the reason why it stays with me is that I talked with them a lot. I talked with them, I emailed, I've been interviewing them, and it's always, I mean, it's always a superior thing to meet the witnesses or to talk with
Hmm.
them directly, because you really get a sense of what has changed in their life, or how they feel, or outside, the technical things, what time of the day was it, or blah blah blah, stuff like that. It's, to me, it's more important with where they are now. How did this affect them? And actually, most of the witnesses I talked with had a very, very positive experience afterwards. They kind of used this high strangeness event to explore life or explore the universe. Maybe they didn't become astronauts. That's you hear now. I'm rambling now, and I have absolutely no idea what your question was at the beginning here. But
I don't remember either, but that's okay.
I
It
hope.
seems like the witnesses, at least from the way it seems in the book, they were very willing to talk about their experience. That's not something we normally get in, say, the United States, where people are just sick of saying the same thing over and over again. It sounds like where you are, they were willing to talk and willing to share how things have changed since then.
Every time someone have an experience like this, it's something totally unique. And when it happens in Sweden, it's like 100 times more unique. How we look at the United States or France or South America or whatever, it seems to happen weird stuff all the time in every little small town. It's not really like that in Sweden. So when something happened here, something extraordinary happens to someone, it stands out in every possible way. And I also think that they sense this themselves. I mean, we have tons of ghosts here in Sweden. We have a couple of lake monsters, but when it comes to things like this dragonfly winged thing, or aliens, or even gnomes, is something a lot more rare. It kind of just breaks the rational secular Swedish attitude in a very beautiful way. And I think people deep inside are pretty proud of having experienced these things, and that's why they want to talk about it. Or in most cases, not always. Sometimes they. I mean, I'm working on a UFO show now, a documentary show about UFOs, and so we've been talking with a lot of witnesses, and I heard it a couple of times that they don't want to be, made fun of or humiliated in television. And that was kind of the most important thing for us. We're going to do these segments with them. We need to really, see the experience as they saw it. We need to listen. It needs to be respect. It could be fun, but it needs to be together with them, at least.
You laugh with them, not at them.
Exactly, exactly. And our host, he's a comedian. He's an actor and director and comedian. He's a very funny guy. Thankfully, he's also very beloved. So when they
Mm.
meet him, it's like meeting an old friend, and they open up even more. And it's beautiful to see. and to hear, of course. I'd say that that's the biggest mistake many people do when it comes to witnesses to these things. They either become too distant or too cold because they want to, investigate it like a real police, basically. So they kind of lose that friendship along the way. It just becomes business. And to me, that's never been a thing. If I'm going to talk with someone, I'm going to be their pal. I'm going to continue to be in contact with them. Yeah, that's how I see it.
So it sounds like this book was an extension of your everyday work.
Yeah, to a certain degree. When I started to write this book, I was still working with a paranormal show, Spökjakt, which is I'm not bragging. Yeah, I'm bragging. It's the biggest, absolutely biggest paranormal show here in Scandinavia. No doubt about it.
Well, you should brag about that, yes.
Okay, I'm bragging, brag. But the thing is, I've been working on this show for several seasons, and I've been working with another quite big paranormal show for a ton of episodes. And while sitting there reading about ghosts for the umpteenth time, I kind of started to feel, I don't know the word here. And, I started to long after doing something else. I started to wish that can't we, expand this show and look at UFOs or monsters or whatever? No such interest. But I began writing this book in secret. Some days are slow at the office. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to start to write a little bit here. And suddenly I had a book, basically. The first draft I had, I'm not kidding you, the first draft I had ready within 2 weeks.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. But then, of course, I started to rewrite it. I started to add stuff. I started to remove stuff. I remember one chapter. No, I don't remember because I don't remember which chapter. It was in the first version, and then I took it out. And when I suddenly got an offer to publish this book in the United States, I put it back in again because I felt, why not? When it's coming out. So it's been a intensive but still pretty long process to write the book. Because in each chapter I begin with a case, a specific incident, and I write about that. And that was my plan from the beginning, to just have just a case, basically. Yeah, plain boring like that. But after writing a chapter, I was like, but I have some thoughts here. I have emotions attached to this incident or what I've read or the people I talked with. So I just started to add stuff, and I began remembering other cases that are kind of similar, or it could be connected some way. And suddenly I had a damn book there with a ton of cases, not just like 8 or 10 cases. So it was like I don't know how to describe it. It was like the book itself is a fractal because you have like just
Oh, for
spreading.
sure.
But I personally like that kind of writing, so I'm happy I went that way here. I like when it's a bit in all directions.
Yeah. And it works too because, like you said, you have that central case, that central theme for each chapter. But as you start reflecting on it, you reach out into the ether and you grab another case that you had heard of or something that had a similarity, and you draw that in and you make these parallels that help with the reflection because ultimately it's your thought process about the case. So we have to know about those other cases for it to make sense.
Yeah.
But it also makes it very journalistic, I guess. It's more like reading an article rather than a I guess more like a textbook.
Hmm.
It's a pleasant read. It's enjoyable. It doesn't feel like it's dragging at any point, which you oftentimes get with UFO books.
Yeah, especially when you're going to squeeze out a book to 400 pages about nothing.
Yeah.
It's I have a ton of those books in my collection. I've never managed to read them. I have them there as reference literature if I need to check on something. But I can't stand a 400-page book about one tiny incident, because I know that there is really not that much stuff to write about. Some cases, at least. Now I feel I'm mean here towards others, but I'm not. It's just my personal taste. And I also wanted to keep the book quite short. I wanted it to feel easy to read. I wanted it to be a book that I could read myself. That's a cliche, yeah, I know, but I just wanted it to be entertaining. I've seen a couple of reviews of the book, and most of them are actually quite good, which I'm very flattered. But the one negative review I've read begins with quite interesting rambles a bit, and I'm thinking of naming my memoirs after that, because that kind of fits my personality. So
That would be a great title.
yeah, I might keep it. Yeah, but I'm still, to be honest, kind of shocked that someone wanted to publish it, because I planned to publish it myself, do the self-publishing thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it was Ryan Sprague at Somewhere in the Skies. He said, "Fred, why don't you send it to Beyond the Fray?" And I yeah, okay, all right, I'll do it. And they got back to me a couple days later and said, "Hey, Fred, can we call you?" And yeah, of course. And they called and said, "Yeah, we really want to publish your book." And I was like, "Whoa!" I didn't expect that, which means that I lost a lot of money by publishing it, because I paid for that, and it's not going to be.
You're in good company on Beyond the Fray. They have fantastic books.
Yeah, they have. They. I think I felt safe there because Ryan have his books on Beyond the Fray, for example, and I enjoy both of them a lot. They have a very human approach to the cases. They're not so into the nuts and bolts porn
Mm-hmm.
of. Oh, that sounded shady, I know, but the nuts and
Spooky
bolts stuff.
porn.
Spooky. Yeah, so yeah, I'm happy. I'm very, very satisfied so far with my relationship with Beyond the Fray, and now it sounds like they paid me to say this, but yeah, I can really recommend them. Great guys.
They work with a lot of podcasters, so they have to have, it seems like they have this respect for the creative process and the tone and the voice that the individual wants in their book, as opposed to making edits and changes specifically to match the publishing style.
I actually asked about that when we were on the phone with G. Michael Hopp, one of the owner, together with Shannon Legros. Because this was the first time I published something in the United States, I asked, I'm aware that, and I'm Swedish, of course, a certain Swedishness will come through, blah, blah, blah. Do you want me to make it more commercial? Yeah, I really tried to, sell out my soul there. I admit that, because, I didn't know what to expect from this kind of deal. And he said, "No, that's why we like the book. It's your style. It's your voice. That's what we want to publish at Beyond the Fray." So of course we went through the book a number of times, trying to fix grammar and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. We still missed a shit ton, to be honest. So don't say that to anyone. But it's corrected. It should be corrected by now. So that was also a very welcome process, to work with someone who, together with me, went through the book, said that this is completely wrong. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
not the content itself, but yeah, there's some grammar and stuff like that. So that was a new thing for me. I've never done it before, and I hope to be able to experience it again, to have someone work with me on just polishing the grammar and spelling and everything like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I was kind of prepared that they would, like, "Fred, you can't write that." But they didn't do that. So
Well, I also know what you're working on behind the scenes, so fingers crossed we get another English book from you
yes,
in the near future.
yep. We'll see what happens.
So let's see. We have two directions I could go right now. One, what was your favorite story that you, or favorite interview even, from the book? Or would you like to talk about Loam?
I mean, that part of the story is I've been, I mean, I wrote it down, of course, in the book, and I've been talking about it from time to time. And sometimes when I talk about it, I realize that I sound crazy. You know, it's like, what what am I talking about here? You know, it's like I sound paranoid. He, here's the thing with this person. I was this was I don't know 2 years ago or something like that. I was researching Swedish Men in Black encounters because that's something that's very, very rare. And I think it's because Sweden is less of a paranoid country than, for example, the United States. There's not so much secrets in that way when it comes to
Hmm.
military and government. So the few cases I found was quite interesting, but I was kind of obsessing with them. I was emailing Håkan Blomqvist, which is a wonderful researcher. It's been around for a long time, and do you know? Have you heard about something? And he said, no, this is the only thing I've heard. And during that process, I was walking home from the store, and a man was passing me on the street. He, I met him, so he just walked past me, and I continued to walk. And sometimes you feel that someone is looking at you,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt that. There's something out there. So I stopped and I turned around, and he was standing there on the street, with his arms down. Imagine Michael Myers or something.
That is so weird.
Yeah, looking at me. And I felt, okay, it's still pretty bright outside. There's no, you won't rob me. So I was I walked home a bit faster, and I, of course, went through a park that's near our home. And then I felt it. I felt he's behind me, and I turn around, and he's standing in the park behind me, maybe 20 meters away, with his arms down, like he's looking at me, and I like, oh no. So I inside lock the door, try to forget about it, just some creep. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
A while later, I am in the living room, probably working on the Men in Black stuff, and I can see how the cats are looking at something out in the hallway. I sense that they're onto something, so I'm onto something. So I go to the hallway. This was kind of in the evening, and I see how the door handle, like in a horror movie, slowly moving up and down. That's it's very, very creepy. There's no one banging on the door or trying, just slowly back and forth. I
Right.
go to what do you call it? The peephole? Is
Yes.
that what? Yeah. And I look through it, and I see the man standing out there, very close to the door. And I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm opening the door because what is he doing? I open the door and I ask, "Hello, what do you want?" And he says, "Luam." And but I didn't understand what he meant, but he asked for Luam. And I said, "There's no Luam here. It's just me, and it's my partner, and there's some cats here. There's no one else." Luam. No, there's no Luam. And I closed the door. And and I thought it was over, but I could look through the people, and he was standing there still. And a while later, we wake up around midnight, and we hear someone ringing the doorbell, and he's standing outside again asking for Luam. So he was basically every day when I come home, I knew that he was standing, a stare up, looking down at our door. So after a while, I was
Ooh.
more like, hey, good morning, good evening, because we got so used to this person standing there asking about Luam. I think maybe the last time I saw him, he was standing outside the balcony in the evening, and I could see his white eyes, kind of almost glowing in the darkness outside. and after that I kind of disappeared, just faded out. So, but this idea with Luam, what is Luam? What is it? Is it a name? Is it something? So I started to, I started to search for it. And Luam is it's a form of soil. I've learned, like a muddy soil or something like that you have in the
Mm-hmm.
garden. So that, okay, that's interesting. Absolutely. It's also can be spelled Lam, Lam, which of course is the entity Aleister Crowley communicated with. He claimed to be an alien entity, with this large head,
Yeah.
kind of gray alien thing. And here my paranoid thoughts just went haywire, and I picked up and looked at the secret cipher of the Ufonauts, Alan H. Greenfield's, what do you call it? Cipher, you know what it is. Everyone knows
Yeah.
what it is. So I
Yeah.
wrote Luam into it, and the words that came out was like shadows or lurking, or, all these sinister
Yeah.
words attached to this. And this, so I mean, there it kind of okay, I don't have a big amazing finale to this story, because I went on with my life and I started to write
Mm-hmm.
the books. I wrote the text about Men in Black, and I mentioned this, of course. I think it was a couple of, I don't know if I mentioned this in the book, but it was maybe a couple of weeks later or maybe a month later or something. I had an odd synchronicity related to the place where I saw him. It was in the morning. I checked my email. There was some British production company who had seen a photo my partner had taken of me, where it kind of looks like there's a Bigfoot or a troll in the background, pareidolia stuff.
Huh.
You can kind of, because I posted it on the internet, because I liked it. No one else is impressed. So of course I was flattered that they thought it was cool. So they asked me, can we use it in our TV show? I said, yeah, go on, do it. Yeah. So a couple hours later, I get an email from a friend in Norway, and he sent me a couple of photos of large footprints, and he said, "This is troll footprints." And yeah, okay, so we have two trolls on the same day. Ah, it's fun. This is great. Nice that. So a little bit later, I go to the store. I go through the park, and exactly at the spot where I saw this man standing at the park, exactly at the same spot, I see something. I see a tiny figure standing on the trail there, and I go closer because it kind of looked humanoid. I mean, we're talking like 10 centimeters in height or something.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and I go closer and closer, and I I'm very close, and I can see it's someone have carved a troll out of wood. So it's a wooden troll with a big nose and ears, traditional Scandinavian troll, as a wooden, statue standing exactly there. Okay, this is of course completely pointless in relationship to the Men in Black and Luam, but it just ended up on the same spot. And I remember I was looking up, looking around, looked at the window at the close that was houses, and they have this large porcelain owl looking out at me from that point. So it's kind of,
Oh
you,
man.
you see, you try to connect the dots, you basically become insane. But yeah.
That really makes you question everything when just these little synchronicities start to
Yeah.
stack up like that.
Oh yeah.
And it
Oh
definitely
yeah.
seems tied to the location.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it was. I mean, the troll synchronicity was fun. The Loam guy was more disturbing, I'd say. But together, I feel that they belong together in some weird way. I mean, you could see the Men in Black, the Luam guy. I call him the Luam guy and not Men in Black. You could see him as a troll himself, or an
Hmm.
internet troll, or someone that stalks you, or it has these double meanings. But it's one of those things, and it ended up in the book, and it felt like, okay, this is a good start of the chapter about Men in Black. Finally, I have a good way of starting.
Yeah. And it seems like there's that parallel that you see from Passport to Magonia, where it's it's Fey-like, but it's also tied in with ufology, and are they really even any different?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the more I read about, I'm specializing on Swedish, folklore and UFOs and high strangeness. I'm basically only looking at that, and by now I see I don't see any difference between modern
Mhm.
sightings of aliens and UFOs and fairies and gnomes. Recently, I've been looking so deeply into. I call them gnomes, the Swedish kind of gnomes, but it's actually their own unique creatures. You have the tomte, you have the vette, you have tisma ondriordi, you have all these local versions of the gnome. But the tomte, it looks basically like you want a gnome to look like. It has a beard, has a pointy hat, it has old-fashioned clothes. It can be quite naughty, and mischievous. And after reading tons and tons of witness statements there, both from the past and modern, I feel like, yeah, this is the same thing.
The Tomte have become rather popular in America recently, although they are still just called gnomes. But you see them especially around Christmas time, and it's been picking up. It's been increasing in popularity over the past 3 or 4 years.
Hmm. That's interesting. I didn't know that really, because I mean here the tomte has been with us in the medieval times. Basically,
Hmm.
I think the earliest mention of a tomte is from the Bridget of Sweden, Saint Bridget, who was this famous Swedish saint. She visits a family out in the Swedish countryside. Everything was countryside at that time, of course. And she discovers that they're not worshiping God or Jesus or go to church. They worshiping the God gnome instead. So this family was working together with the gnome. They worshipped it according to her, because at the time they consider all these forest spirits, these land spirits, they were considered demonic. Of course, it
Mm.
was messengers from the devil, basically, which for me makes it even more fun. If they thought that, so gnomes, the tomte is like a huge part of our legacy here in Sweden. It's like you see them everywhere. Not real tomtes, of course, but the symbol of tomte and
Hmm.
dolls and such. Especially, of course, around the winter months. But that doesn't mean the tomte has stayed away from modern life, because people are still seeing these creatures. It happens even up to this day. Actually, today I saw a photo of an alleged tomte. Maybe. It was quite interesting. It's a very blurry photo that a witness sent to UFO Sverige and wanted us to investigate. Kind of looks like a little gray, but it also looks like it has a pointy hat on. So I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very strange photo, and he claims to have more photos of it. So I don't have so much to say about it at the moment, but I'm very curious to see those other photos.
Yeah.
It's of course, as usual, blurry and hard to see, but still there's something odd, and you know hopefully the witness is someone to be trusted. I think it was like 1 year ago, more than 1 year ago, someone on Twitter told me, check out this guy's account here, and there was a forest worker,
Hmm.
really nice guy, who had filmed while working. He kind of did a panorama shot of the forest when he's in there, and he discovered a small creature. It looks like a small creature, like 1 meter tall with a
Hmm.
pointy hat, walking by, beside a tree, maybe 20, 30 meters away. Quite interesting also. Could be a child or an animal or a very small old lady or something, but it kind of looks like a tomte. I think so.
Huh. Traditionally, what are their role in Swedish belief systems?
The tomte is originally the tomte was seen as the ghost or spirit of the first owner of the land.
Mm.
So when people, humans came, they built their farm, they, grew their crops, everything like that. But the tomte stayed on the spot, often living underneath the house or somewhere in close proximity to humans. And the tomte is very strong-minded. I mean, because it's always a male. There's very, very rare. There's hardly any female tomtes out there. If you look at folklore and witness testimonies, he takes care of the farm. He helps with the farm. And if you treat the farm badly or the tomte badly, he will get very, very angry. There's one old story, probably just pure folklore, where it said that the tomte got so angry he hit a guy in the head so the eyes popped out. So he's very strong also. Yeah. So the tomte loves to live around farms and he loves to take care of horses. He makes this. This is interesting. In the United States, you always have this. Not always. I'm exaggerating. You have this. They claim that Bigfoots make. What do you call it in the hair of horses?
They
Kind of
braid
like,
horsehair,
yeah,
yes.
exactly. That's what the tomte is doing in Sweden to horses. The exact same
And
thing.
that's something you see in Ireland as well, the fairy locks.
Oh, yes,
Except they
exactly.
weren't as good at doing the braids. They tended to tangle a little bit, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're not perfect here in Sweden either. But they have tiny hands, and this horse hair. The mane is probably quite hard to handle. So I think we
Hmm.
just have to live with that. So, but I mean, the tomte is a creature you need to respect. You need to treat it well, and it will treat you well. If you don't do that, it can be dangerous.
So what do you do in order to treat it well? What do they expect out of the homeowner?
They're happy if you take care of the stable and barn. Just make it so it looks clean and nice. Don't put the horses or cows above their home so they pee down in their home. There's lots of stories like that where they come out and they're angry because they get cow urine on top of their homes. Another good way, and this you can see in modern, modern traditional. So you just put out porridge to the tomte outside, and I don't know if in Sweden people do that to Santa Claus. They put out a plate of porridge on the doorstep. So or maybe a beer sometime, something so he doesn't have to be hungry and get more energy to deliver
Hmm.
gifts to people. But that comes from the small gnomes of Sweden. You gave them some porridge, something to drink, maybe some a little. I usually joke that I would like to go out and see a gnome, not hunt them, but you can call it gnome hunting. And then I will bring a small nice clothes, and I will put a small glass of whiskey for them, and then I
Oh
will
yeah.
yeah, then I will hide somewhere nearby to see when they show up. Maybe one day, I hope so.
If nothing else, that sounds like a fun day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We have gone way off track from well, I guess this is all still high strangeness in Sweden, just a little bit more nuanced than what's in the book.
Yeah.
So I guess should we reveal that that is your current research topic?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, let's do it. My next project. I've actually started to write, but I'm also collecting a lot of material because I want to write a book about Swedish gnomes or gnome gods, if you can call them that. So I'm looking for old stories and new stories. I'm trying to look at them from a philosophical perspective. What do they mean to us? How have they affected us? How have popular culture affected how we see gnomes, for example? Is there something like that? Very exciting thing. I have no idea how long it will take me to write it, but I feel that if I'm gonna, I need to write Oh, now I'm making it dangerous for me. I want to make the ultimate Swedish gnome book in English. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah. Wish me luck.
Oh, absolutely. I know I'm excited for this. It seems like we're in this renaissance era for Fortean research where it's becoming hyper localized again. We've had a lot of time with broad topics and broad themes, but now we're looking back into folklore and regional variants and how individuals and regions conceptualize different things like this. And it's great to see it, and I'm excited to see where it goes in the future.
I think I fell in love with local history, local high strangeness history, because I felt that the subject I'm interested in, which is UFOs and monsters and such, has become too. It stopped being personal. It stopped being intimate, and I wanted to go back to my own roots. I wanted to bring out something that people in other countries maybe never heard of before. I mean, there's tons of books about, generic UFO books about the subject, in broad strokes. It's like, we read and we read that before. I can't even read those books anymore because I've read everything.
They say the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm so happy, for example, when Joshua Cutchin published Ecology of Souls. Have you read those books?
I have not had a chance to tackle that yet.
Yeah, it's a massive work.
That's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, but that someone do that, get an idea. Okay, this has to do about death and dying and the process of
Mhm,
dying and all the mythology around it, and connect it to fairies, to gnomes, to UFOs. It's brilliant. And
mhm.
I absolutely love it's such a massive work. It takes time to go through it. It's so much information, but I truly enjoy and love that stuff like that is coming out and become published. So it's out in book form. I To be honest, I have a hard time reading texts on the internet. So I when I read a long text, I need to print it first on paper to be
Oh,
able to
yes.
read it. So I'm happy for books like this. I hope that people will discover Sweden and Swedish high strangeness a lot more. I mean, nothing bad at all about Socorro and all those classic American cases. I love them, but I'm tired of reading about them. I want to read and write about stuff that I haven't read about before. My wish or my hope was that people out there would enjoy it the same way. Read something new, or new and new. It's old cases, but it's still new in many ways. I doubt I will ever write a generic UFO book. It will always go into folklore and Swedish weirdness for sure.
I hope you don't write a generic book. That would not be good.
I promise. I promise.
Okay. You mentioned something earlier in the interview that ghosts and sea serpents in Sweden are pretty seen as pretty mundane as opposed to UFOs. I'm curious about that. Are there really that many ghost stories and sea serpents in your area?
Yeah, I mean, especially ghosts. You have ghosts absolutely everywhere. Everyone who owns an apartment or lives in a house or works somewhere, they can always tell a ghost story. And this is odd because it is a larger stigma to talk about UFOs and stuff like that. But people in general have no issues talking about their, ghost stories, what they've seen or heard, or it's everywhere. I heard the most hardcore skeptics tell about the spooky experience they had. It's like it's so common. It's so incredibly common. And I worked on a show where we went to a lot of homes that were allegedly haunted. So we brought a psychic medium to each of these places who could talk with the ghosts, which often turned out to be some grandma or whatever, as usual. And he sent them off to wherever they go, or told them to keep quiet and don't scare them so much. But it's everywhere. It's everywhere. We've been in apartments, we've been in mansions, we've been in every kind of home, and it's everywhere. I was kind of surprised myself when I began working with it because I didn't understand at that time how common it is for ghosts. With lake monsters, yeah, you have a bunch of lake monsters in Sweden. You have the big lake monster, which is kind of well known even outside of Sweden, and you have Tavelsjömonstret. You have everywhere where there's a mysterious lake, there's often some kind of big monster, a serpent or something else moving around according to people, folklore and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, it's I don't know why really, but if you look at old rune stones, we have rune stones everywhere here. I sometimes joke that you can blindfold yourself and throw a stone over your shoulder and it will hit the rune stone because there's always something somewhere. Depending on which age of rune stones you look at, they often have a serpent on
Mm-hmm.
along, it's slithering around the stone. And I wonder if that's have helped creating people's experiences, or if they are created from people's experience, or if it's just a mix of it. But it's fascinating. Do you know I've seen a lake monster once?
No.
but I lived in Östersund. Östersund is a town in northern Sweden. It has a beautiful lake and it has mountains nearby. It's a beautiful place. I was walking along a street, and there was other streets going down towards the lake, so I could see the water down there. And this was a pretty clear day. It was during daytime, at least. The sun was shining, and suddenly I saw something. I'd say it wasn't that large, maybe 20, 30 meters in length, swimming upstreams, against the wind. Well, maybe 50, I don't know, 50 to 100 meter out from the shore. And I was standing looking at it, and I was like, it was difficult to comprehend because you've been hearing people talking about this lake monster so many times, and suddenly you see something out there, minding its own business, swing by. It, of course, it could have been some natural explanation or something. It could be a whatever. But I choose to believe it was the big lake monster because it felt like that. My experience felt like that. But it was one of those, you see it and you kind of just continue to move forward in life. You
Yeah.
it's odd. The few times I've experienced stuff, it's always been like that. You experience it and you kind of almost forget about it. It's been during the process when writing this book, a lot of these memories comes back, and sometimes I've been able to find notes I did at the time. So I know it's not just manufactured memories or something like that. I knew that something happened. So in that way, it helped me a lot. It's been wonderful writing this book because I've been starting to realizing that, yeah, I had a couple of weird experiences myself, because I always say that no, I haven't seen anything, but I have. So
Now, I don't want to distract you from the gnome book because I'm looking forward to that one. But it sounds like the lake monster book may be a good follow up.
could be, but I'm really trying to find more land living or even air living cryptids in Sweden.
Ooh.
They're very rare, but there is a story from time to time about something hairy lurking around in the forest, or something slimy coming up from the water grabbing someone. This it's always the stories are always very, it's hard to trace them. But I've heard a couple that's very, very interesting, and could be, I'm thinking actually about maybe sometime in the future a book about Swedish cryptids. So I'm sure that lake monsters will have a chapter or two or three in that book. We'll see. We'll see. I don't want to jinx that. Now it's gnome stuff for me.
Well, it sounds like even the lake monsters are pretty varied. You said there was like a serpent type, but also that weird slimy thing that crawled up on land.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a lot of potential here.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the slimy thing, I've been really trying to trace that one down. I read the story, but it's everything is so vague. I need to go out to this specific place to see if I just find someone or ask some local there, because I'm kind of stuck in it. We have a pterodactyl, some kind of flying dinosaur, also down in the south of Sweden, which I've been trying to trace. It's so much actually. And yeah, we'll see. But the slimy thing, it's a good one. We'll see if I find something.
I'm curious if you run into this same situation that we do here, where there's this event that takes place or a creature that's been sighted in a very specific location, but when you go to that location and you ask the locals about it, they have no idea what you're talking about.
Exactly that. For example, with this pterodactyl, finds a lot of stories. People write about it. So I decided, okay, I have to contact someone in this small town and ask. So first, I write to the local government and say, "Hey, have you heard about the pterodactyl flying around there?" And they're like, "No." But you can ask this old guy, Johnny. He had a bookstore for like 50 years. So I call him and I ask him, "Have you heard about this pterodactyl flying around there?" And he's like, "No, what are you talking about?" And he's been this pterodactyl is allegedly living on an island in a small lake. And he told me, "Well, I've been a guide in this area on the lake and the island." He never in his whole life, and I think he was around maybe 80 years when I talked with him, he never heard about this. But you can find stories about it and gossip about it, and
Huh.
that's odd. I don't know if it's some kind of creepy pasta going around, some early, but it's been going around for many years in that case. So hopefully, interestingly enough, they found last year a bunch of dinosaur, what do you call it, fossils, not that far away, including pterodactyl style flying objects. I almost said, but flying flying animals. So that makes me wonder. It's quite rare with dinosaurs in Sweden, but they find dinosaurs in this area or quite close to it, which makes me wonder: is there something to these stories? Because there's more stories about
Yeah.
big flying creatures down there that goes back 200 years at least. So there's maybe some truth to it.
Yeah. Now I'm trying to remember, does Sweden have you have dragons in your mythology there, but are they flying dragons or are they more land-bound?
Dragons in Sweden are mostly living inside the mountains. Never encountered a dragon story where they actually fly. They're mostly guarding their gold, basically.
Hmm.
That's what I found. There might be more. I remember there's some old story about a dragon-like snake that someone claimed to have seen as a child. It's based on the old Norse mythology, Lindormen. It's called the Lindormen snake.
The connection I was trying to make is between, like, the pterodactyl sightings and dragons, and if there were any connections, but it sounds like ultimately in Sweden you have land-bound underground dragons, not the type that flies through the skies.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, most dragons, or basically all dragons, are no. There is stories often related to more historical person. It goes way back. You have Saint Göran, for example, who battled a dragon, but it was still on the ground. The stories we have about dragons in Sweden, they're often guarding mines. They're guarding their gold down there. So when it comes to flying dragons, I haven't heard anything about something like that. If you don't choose to see the pterodactyl as some kind of dragon, which of course they could be related in that way, but the folklorish mythological being creature dragon is land bound, I'd say, or even mine bound or mountain bound. It's greedy. It stays in its
Yeah.
place, killing people there instead of roaming around. But it's Swedish folklore and mythology is a large subject, and you can probably find something else, but it's quite rare in general. It's quite rare with land living cryptids. actually in Sweden. Most of them are from the water, from lakes or from sea or whatever. We have a few Bigfoot sightings in Sweden, but it's not common at all, and I'm quite skeptical about them, to be honest. I was actually looking into a series of Bigfoot sightings in the 80s, and I managed to trace them down to a certain journalist and ufologist that I happen to know was basically he made things up. It was really so all these stories came from him basically. But I was looking into them and all, because it can always be something in the background. And I was asking at local groups on Facebook. They have all these small town groups, and there was actually a man calling me after that and said that what he heard that during the 80s, during I think it was 80, 84, 85, there was a homeless person or someone that was willingly homeless. He preferred to live in the nature, and he had a lot of furs on, and he never took a bath. He never did anything. He had big, long hair and beard. And this man claimed that this was what people saw at the time. They could smell him. They got scared by him, and somehow it evolved into some kind of Bigfoot story along the way. Who knows?
I mean, even that story in itself is fascinating.
It is. It is. I've been very very curious to see if I can find more information about this man. If there's anything written about him. Who was he? Was he a modern wild man? Because I mean we have 70% of Sweden is forest, just forest. So there's a lot of space if you're a cryptid or a forest spirit. There's a ton of space to roam around in.
Well, we are coming up well over an hour at this point. Before we get out of here, is there anything you would like to plug?
Oh, I'd like to plug one thing, and that's my book. Please buy my book. No, I'm very, I'm very proud of the book, and you can find it on Amazon. Or if you don't want to buy it from Amazon, which I totally understand, you can find it anywhere else. At wherever you buy books online. And please join me on Twitter and Instagram. My account name is Homo Satanis, and I love to connect with people. I love to hear stories. I love to exchange information. So please join me there. That's something I would like to plug: books and social media.
Excellent. And I'll post links to all of this in the show notes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this interview. I know you've been on the podcast circuit pretty heavily over the past month or so.
Yeah, but I'm very very grateful for having opportunities like this to talk with amazing people like you, to talk about her strangeness, not just the book, but talk about the subject in general, and especially these kind of conversations I find very rewarding. It's free flowing, it's creative, it's fun, and I love that so much. So I mean, thank you, really, thank you.
And I don't know about you, but I tend to get the best ideas out of interactions like this.
Same here. Same here. I've had people. I always tell people, you have to email me that book you mentioned, or you have to send me that, because there's always something I hear, and I need to look into it deeper, and it also kind of frees your mind, not freeze. It frees your mind. It sounds like I'm saying it freezes over, but you know what I mean. Uh, it frees
It
your mind.
liberates your thought process.
Oh yeah, thank you. It liberates my thought process. It makes my brain and mind and emotions work a lot better in connection to this subject and in life in general. So yeah, it's so much fun.
Well, I think that's where we will end tonight. So thank you once again for joining us. That was Northern Lights High Strangeness in Sweden. The author is Fred Andersson. Find him on Instagram at Homo Satanis. Like I said, I'll post a link in the show notes. Until next time, stay weird.
I'm getting like 10 messages. I feel my pulse is going up from them. I'm just trying to make them stop. I don't know what's going on. And the cat is puking in the background. Sorry, I completely lost my what do you call it? My
train of thought.
Train of thought, yeah.
Hi, Techie Joe here. I work with Asa Knight and some of the best psychics in West Virginia to create amazing live streams and podcasts for the Psychic Coffee Shop Network. Together, we brew up great content discussing news, events, hot topics, and more, all from a psychic perspective. On the Psychic Coffee Shop, we interview amazing authors in the metaphysical realm. Coffee and Tea combines Asen with Tracy, Dottie, Natalie, or Lady Gwendolyn for the good and the bad of being a psychic. Shameless Self-Promotion with Dottie the Psychic talks to leading and emerging YouTubers and business owners in our community. Mountain Bears brings you the latest in LGBT news and politics. The Psychic That Plans answers the question of, well, how a psychic plans. Plus, we're live on air. We take your comments and your questions, including psychic advice questions. Check out our amazing programming, book an appointment with top psychics, and find out all the wonderful things we have to offer at pcsbnetwork.com today.